Hey everybody, my name is Joe.
I'm also Joe.
Welcome back to SNES's Life Recap number 34, I do believe. We are covering the Combatribes, Super Strike Eagle, Spindizzy, Super Conflict, and Inindo Way of the Ninja. Let's get started. Combatribes, March 1993. The Combatribes is a beat 'em up. I think you're cyborgs, frankly. You're fighting cyborgs. And it's interesting.
It's not great. Something. All right, if we're gonna review it, the first things first is graphics. I think it did really decently graphically.
I think the graphics were okay.
It didn't try to be realistic. It was very cartoony when you got into
Yes.
it. Like it was, tiny little chicken legs with very bulky arms and big heads. It was very much cartoon characters.
Yeah, it leaned into that pretty heavily. It was like, look, this is the art style we're going for. It's very silly and cartoony, and that's fine.
I think it did. I think I liked the graphics better because it tried to be super cartoony.
Some of the pixel art was really quite good, actually. Music and sound were pretty lackluster. I mean, it was a fighter, so a lot of what there was thump, smack, punch, kick. There were no real special things you could do. The music was very underwhelming, not memorable. The gameplay kind of suffered for that. The hitboxes weren't quite good enough. They were a little loose. And it was one of those games where it's like you have a punch and a kick. And that's pretty much it. And if you got next to someone, you could, if you hit punch and away, you could grab them and throw them.
The game was also slow and it was very short.
It was very short, which I'm okay with short. I think that was a bonus in its favor.
We got killed. We lost all of our continues at the third level out of 6?
Something like that.
And so we ended up using a cheat to get...
It started getting pretty tough.
Yeah, we ended up using a cheat to get 30 credits. Well, the thing is, it wasn't tough because, you could pick up the guys and spin them in circles. That's the most overpowered thing in the game.
Yeah, because it knocks everybody else down. And it's not hard. You just walk up to them while they're on the ground and press the forward and punch, and you grab and wink them around in the air, which I thought was hilarious.
Right.
I love that they put that in there.
The problem comes from when you finish that first set of enemies, you walk immediately to the boss.
Yes.
And the boss is ridiculous. Now, for the first couple levels, it's not that bad. But then you get to the bosses, and the bosses all have 2 stages where they have a weapon, and then you make them drop their weapon.
And then they beat the dog's snot out of you.
The problem started with the guy who uses the hammer.
Oh, yeah.
Because
the
he
nightclub.
did not drop the weapon.
He just kept bashing you to death with it.
And he has a very fast attack. And the bosses just get increasingly more difficult, while the levels don't actually increase in difficulty all that much.
Yeah, the bad guys themselves are not that hard to kill. You can see us beating them up here. And then, as far as the shortness of the game, you're right. This is the level right here. See, we finished killing the last guy, and it says, hey, go back this way.
And then
it's just hey, look, there's a boss.
Yeah.
There he
after
is.
We lost the game, and then we came back to it, we ended up beating it.
Yeah.
All in that one night. So we lost and then proceeded to beat it.
It's a very short game.
So.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it's not something I would run out and get. I don't know. I expect some more level progression in my fighting games. And while this one looked okay, it didn't make up for the shortcomings that it did have. So
I will say it was the first game that has had a female antagonist in it.
That's true. The big boss at the end was a chick, That's maybe a little sex. She was a female, and she beat the dog. She's a cyborg. She would electrocute you and stuff. So interesting game. But yeah, not something I would rush out and get.
2 thumbs down.
Next up is Super Strike Eagle. This was it the first fighting? It is the first fighter airplane game we've played, I do believe.
Airplane, maybe.
Yeah, we played Desert Strike, which was helicopter. Obviously, we played Pilot Wings, which had the helicopter mission at the end as well.
We played Wing Commander.
Yeah, Wing Commander and God, what was that other space one that was kind of like Wing Commander Light?
The not good one.
Warp Speed. And those were both okay. And those, I mean, I guess those are cockpit fighters, but they're not like traditional, this is the F-14 Tomcat air fighter. Graphically, I think the game looked okay. It could be better. I mean, it's pretty simplistic.
It was a bit hard to
really
tell what was going on when you were doing the bombing part.
It was extremely difficult to tell what the hell was going on when you were doing the bombing part. I will give you that without argument. The game had no music, which is an issue. Now, I get they're like, you're in an air fighter, so you hear the jet engines and the guns and the missiles. But dead silence. I mean, I don't care how much you're trying to simulate a thing. Okay? I'm not actually in a fighter plane. I don't want silence. Put music in it. Give me ambience. Make it Top Gun-ish. Do some kind of heavy rock riff. I don't care. But silence is just unacceptable. So big thumbs down on that front. Now, gameplay. If you're not good at cockpit fighters...
I'm not.
You're not gonna like it at all because I mean, yeah, you haven't liked any of the cockpit fighting games. You just, for whatever reason, you don't. I don't know if you don't coordinate well with them or whatever, but
I don't know.
I enjoyed it fine. Like you said, so when you're not in a dogfight, it goes out to this map here, which lets you fly around and kind of direct yourself. And all the enemy bases are on these islands, and then later on. You get to a larger land masses, but here's the flyover bombing thing, which, as you can tell, I like what they did with kind of the three-dimensional plane. Looks really cool, but on the ground, it's hard to see what is going on.
It's not so hard here because there's one thing in the middle of the nowhere,
right.
But
on some of the maps, it gets pretty.
The HQ, where it's in the middle of a city, everything is a building around it, and it's just a building.
It's difficult to see what the hell it is, and even more so, like. All the ground sites are shooting at you. So you have to try and fly through it fairly quickly. And when it switches in that mode, if you're going max speed, your dude is across the screen and you're gone. Which makes sense. I mean, realistically, if you were going max speed in an airplane, you would blast by things super duper fast and would not be able to bomb them realistically. I actually did enjoy this game. It is a game that I would put music on in the background myself, since there is none. But I think if you're a fan of flight simulator games, then I think this game is probably worth checking out. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't mind picking it up. I'm sure it's dirt cheap. I think we talked about the last couple games on the show. I looked them up on Price Chart and see what they were going for. I think this one was like $9. I'm like, yeah, if I ran this $9, I'd pick it up. What the hell? So I gave it a thumbs up.
I did not give it a thumbs up.
You continue to hate fly games. That's okay.
It's not like I hate all of them.
Well, close enough.
I thumbed up one.
Pilot Wings.
Well, no, if we're counting Pilot Wings, I thumbed up 2. I thumbed up Wing Commander.
Oh, yeah, because it's a story-driven. All right, so next up, Spindizzy Worlds.
God. There's really only, like, one accurate way I can think of how to explain this. It's like you took Cubert, made him a top, and gave him omnidirectional control. And then it's the hardest thing to control.
I disagree with the statement of Cubert.
It's the Cubert perspective.
Well, yes, it's the same perspective.
It's also the same control style.
It is. This is basically an evolution on NES's Marble Madness, which I made you play after we were done with this. You're a top. You're spinning around this damn world. You have velocity. You can go. There will be later areas where you go up ramps and you have height to deal with, and if you fall too far, you break and die. Which was the same in Marble Madness. If you fell too far, your marble would shatter. You're basically looking for switches and buttons and things to activate the teleporters to the next areas. There will eventually be enemies who will attempt to kill you. It's just it's a puzzle maze, really. Like, you're just trying to navigate these puzzles, figure out how to open doors and switches and teleporters. Graphically is very basic. It doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look good.
I don't think it needed to look great.
No, and it didn't have to be exceptional looking, but it's very plain. I don't know. Like, they could have done something a little more with it. The music was very underwhelming. It did change with every level, but some of the levels you were in for a while. And it's just kind of an annoying loop. Sound, there really was very little sound effects. Like, your guy would be like, clunk, or boing, if you, like, pushed a button.
We do also have to mention that this is the game.
Yeah, like, there's nothing else to it. This is the game.
You run around and you collect the things to finish the level, and sometimes they're timed levels.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
And there are...
like 400, 500 levels.
A lot.
Something ridiculous.
It was, I think it said like 400 worlds, and each world has 5 levels, and then the boss level.
Yeah, it's a bit nuts. So
like,
I mean,
don't get me wrong, it's impressive. They fit that amount of levels into the SNES cartridge.
but it's not fun.
But yeah, it is the same thing over and over again, with just more difficult as it continues.
Right. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun in the sense that it didn't make me want to keep playing. Like, I got it. I get why some people might like it. I'm not that people. It was just a little too bland for me. And mind you, we didn't get to the levels where there were enemies actively chasing you. But it just, I don't know, too repetitive and simple, and didn't care for it. Thumbs down.
Yep, thumbs down.
Next up, Super Conflict. This is a turn-based hexagonal strategy game based on, I guess, technically the Middle East War in the Gulf in the early 90s. One of you is America, one of you is essentially Saudi Arabia, or, Saddam Hussein's people. It's a bunch of American tanks versus a bunch of Russian tanks, which is most of what Saddam's people were driving around in. I mean, it's basic, It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good.
I feel like it didn't need to look good.
Right, because it's top-down most of the time.
But the interstitial periods where it's just showing the combat were bad. Like, they were bad, and they weren't skippable, and they were like 30 seconds long for every single one, and as you get more and more troops you just have to fight longer. The turns just get more and more longer.
Yeah.
And it's repetitive. The only difference between each fight is whatever terrain you're in changes your background, and that's it.
And that's the biggest part of strategy here. So each different unit type has a little bit of a different attack and defense, and the idea is to get them into the most advantageous terrain for their fights. And the problems primarily come down to this. It's slow. The AI is very stupid, because I got to a point where the AI was stomping me, and then he basically stood his flag tank next to me, and I'm in a city and he's in open ground. He ran out of gas. He got stuck there. And instead of moving his other stuff around to help, he just sat there, and I just pummeled him over a couple of rounds and eventually killed him. But here's the biggest problem right here. Like you said, these cutscenes. Every time you fight a battle, it does this cutscene. And this cutscene, it doesn't last 30 seconds, I don't think. It probably lasts like 15 to 20 maybe. But the point is, every single battle, you have to watch this stupid thing play out. And it takes forever. And I can't fathom having to sit there and... Because I can only assume in the later games that there's a lot of crap on the maps. Because I know you can eventually get factories and aircraft carriers and bases to build more units. And it's just like... it could be there... Because for the first game you play, it's probably fine. It's kind of interesting to watch. But there should have been an option to turn that off.
Or at least skip it.
Mm-hmm. The sound was okay. The music was very repetitive. It was very short loop tracks. It did change in the second level, but you just didn't care. It wasn't good. And again, I could mute this and turn on regular music and play it. But those those little cutscenes between every battle makes even the simplest fight take forever. I mean, it took us like half an hour, almost 40 minutes, just to get through the first scenario. And you can play 2 players, which is something. I guess if you wanted to leave it on all day, you could treat it like a game of chess that you just leave sitting. Be like, hey, I'm going to make a move. Next time you walk by the TV, make a move. And then next time I walk by the TV, I'll make a move. But untenable, unreasonable, not worth it. Thumbs down.
Yeah, definitely thumbs down.
Finally, we have something we did not realize existed. It is a JRPG / Koei strategy simulation game. Koei. Ugh. Why, Koei? Why? And apparently it is not the only one. It is one in a series. This is Inindo, Way of the Ninja. Pixel art and cutscenes are great.
Graphically speaking, I don't think the game was actually bad.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty decent.
Yeah. All this interstitial stuff looks amazing. I think the pixel art's done really, really well. And even the in-game.
Yeah, the in-game and the story were all pretty well
decent.
Done.
Yeah.
And the story it was semi-based on history where Nobunaga was trying to unify Japan and take it over. But, only semi-based in it because you are a ninja with ninjutsu and magic powers.
Nabungo. And then you go from fighting historically to suddenly you're being attacked by devils, slimes, and giant centipedes.
Yeah.
And the world map is literally a map of Japan. The in-game stuff, which we should get to shortly here, it doesn't look as sharp or polished as a Final Fantasy game did. Because we've only played one Final Fantasy game on here so far. That was Final Fantasy 2, which I think in Japan was like Final Fantasy 3 or 4. But so it didn't look as sharp as that, but it didn't look bad. Your dude hauls balls. He runs like a son of a bitch. In the overworld, there are no random battles, which is nice. But the second you walk into a dungeon, it goes straight to Final Fantasy 5 feet has a fight, 5 feet have a fight, 5 feet have a fight, 5 feet have, and it's just, oh my god. That is the thing that I cannot stand about JRPGs. And it's the thing that made Mario RPG tolerable, because you could avoid the fights if you really wanted to, because they were on the screen and you could just walk around them. Yeah, I mean, otherwise the game was generally okay. But much like other JRPGs, it's a very long game. We looked up the speedrun record on it. It was like 32 hours or something, like 36 hours gameplay out of it. That's a lot.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna play this.
Not finishing this anytime soon.
I mean, it had a fairly robust store system. A lot of different equipment you could buy and things.
Look, everything in it that wasn't the combat was actually pretty well done. Like,
yes.
The way you talk to people was pretty decent.
Even the combat wasn't bad. I mean, other than fighting every 5 feet.
Well, right.
But, I mean, that's just something you do in JRPGs. The thing is, it is a JRPG.
Yeah, there's that, but I really enjoyed the way you got to add people to your party. You go and you visit either the taverns or the tea shops, and you talk to people, and you have to raise your friendship level with them by talking to them.
Yep.
And once you get to a high enough level, you can recruit them into your party, or I'm assuming, demote them out of your party for other people. But, it was a pretty cool way to do that. But, it's, the combat. And it's a game that expects you to grind, because the first enemy I fought in technically the first dungeon, the not tutorial dungeon,
beat the dog piss out
forced me to use almost all of my healing potions.
Yeah. The other thing is, so we mentioned it was a Koei, it was a strategy simulation game. One of the other things is when you go to these taverns and meet these other people, you can ask them about work. And they'll be like, oh, this daimyo over here in this city's looking for work. And then late game, you go to these different cities and daimyos, and you get hired by them. And over time, you build a trust relationship with them, I guess. Or a negative trust with them, I guess, if you're fighting them for one of the other daimyos. And eventually, they start the war with, what's his name? Nobunaga. And you end up it breaks out to a provincial view, and you're guiding troops around the map to fight this war against the guy to weaken him so that you can go in and eventually kill him.
It switches from JRPG to
Overland Simulation.
the Koei game.
Yeah, to a Koei game. Which is really neat, but I can't imagine how far into the game that is as far as hours.
And JRPGs already take long, and Koei games already take forever.
I don't need them together.
Yeah. The 32 hours makes sense.
Yeah. In the end, I did thumb this down, as did you.
Mm-hmm.
I think my recommendation is if you want to play a JRPG, probably stick with Final Fantasy for now. It is slightly more polished than this game. There's actually a little less menu management because you don't have to like do whole conversations with people just to learn their names and learn about them so that you can then later hire them and recruit them. There's no simulation thing involved with it. So, I don't know. I mean, if it sounds interesting, you might be the target audience for it. We're sure as hell not. So, again, it played like JRPG, so it doesn't play bad. It's just slightly less polished, I think, than Final Fantasy all around. But it has some interesting ideas, for sure. So, 2 thumbs down for Inindo. But I can see that there probably are some people out there who might like it. But that's it for number 34, guys. We've done another 5 games. We got a bunch coming up, of course. So we will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us, and have a good night.
See you guys.